dealing with a gentleman by the name of Toussaint Louverture. Toussaint Louverture. Folks, the big issue with Louverture is, yes, he's a slave. He leads a revolt. For our class, what is important? This revolt takes place around 1801. What is the big item? The general, Leclerc, makes the tactical decision. I'm not telling. Flat out, absolutely, as the revolt begins, and please understand, it is estimated that tens of thousands of slaves, the entire sugar production of the island stops. Leclerc decides, I'm not telling. Why? Napoleon is going to be pissed. So what is the better philosophy? I'm going to put down the revolt. I have a 20,000-man army. I will bring Louverture to justice. And once it's done, I will tell him. Ladies and gentlemen, the revolt lasts almost a year. Thousands and thousands of dollars of damage is done. Hundreds of people and slaves are killed. But after a year, the revolt is stopped, and Louverture himself will be apprehended and killed. So Leclerc does end the revolt. Here's where the problem comes. Why did I tell you to put a star and then another star? Leclerc puts his message on the boat. He now briefs Napoleon on the situation. Bless you. And ladies and gentlemen, that letter arrives in France in 1803. Ladies and gentlemen, by unbelievable, remarkable timing, the letter from Leclerc to Napoleon arrives almost exactly as James Monroe shows up. What is the big deal? Napoleon reads the letter, and remember, people say he's angry, he's got the temper. Napoleon's immediate reaction is defiance. My soldiers get lazy. Napoleon looks at everything as excuses. When Leclerc argues that his men had malaria, that his men were sick, he takes that as an excuse. Napoleon believes, how can a 20,000-man army be bested for months by a group of slaves? How could this army ever be expected to take over the New World and defeat America? Napoleon begins to believe that without him there to provide discipline, his army becomes disorganized. Napoleon's decision from that letter is he basically tells Talleyrand, remember XYZ, he is still the foreign minister. Napoleon gives the direct order, sell it. Napoleon's decision is, we will get as much money as we can. We will use the money to wage war against England, because right now that is France's problem in Europe. Bless you. Napoleon believes that we could use the extra money to tip the war against the English. We will then conquer Europe. By making this, it is also more likely that the Americans would stay out. America will remain neutral. Napoleon's grand plan would be take the money, conquer Europe, and then after Europe is all French, he would then eventually spread to the New World and then eventually to Asia and conquer the world. What is the difference? Napoleon believes now that he has to lead the invasions. He cannot, generals in charge, so literally Napoleon would be the one who would be, implementing each phase. So ladies and gentlemen, the French go from they will not sell, they're not interested, to literally Talleyrand comes into Livingston's office and says, do you guys want to buy it, yes or no? I need an answer by tomorrow. And literally what saves the day is because Livingston really did not have the authority to buy Louisiana, is Monroe shows up, and he did. I mean, Livingston was told to basically ask questions, get information. Monroe was actually given parameters. They begin to negotiate. What becomes the problem? We were authorized to buy New Orleans for $10 million. The French want to sell all of Louisiana. They don't want to sell part of it, they want to sell all of it. So that originally is a little bit against what was originally offered. The two men begin to work out a deal. So ladies and gentlemen, what we are about to do will be the Louisiana Purchase. The United States will agree to buy Louisiana because what is the theory? Livingston and Monroe believe they will work out the deal, and if the President and the Senate do not like it, they can reject it. But it's better to try. The deal is the United States of America will pay, get this, $15 million for Louisiana. We will pay $15 million for that entire piece of land. Plus, we will forgive $3 million in debt. If you want to be really accurate, it's $3.1 million. The French government, because of their war, had been borrowing money. So if you add the two together, the total price of Louisiana would be $18.1 million. $15 million in cash and $3.1 that the French don't pay back from prior investments. So the purchase of Louisiana would be $18.1 million for the entire piece of land. The next item. What did we buy? Ladies and gentlemen, most of Louisiana has not been surveyed. There was no maps. Literally, when Monroe and Livingston asked what they bought or what was in Louisiana, Talleyrand was angry. He thought it was a bad deal, but you can't tell Napoleon that. Literally, the definition we were given, and please pay attention because it is going to be important later. The definition of Louisiana was the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains, Canada and Mexico. Ladies and gentlemen, are those all defined, definitive borders? What is the only one that is truly a defined border? Mississippi. The problem with the Rockies is the Rocky Mountains span over how much land? I mean, even if you go by east to west, they span over several hundred miles. Is it the start of the mountains? Is it the middle of the mountains? Is it the end of the mountains? But the bigger problem is, what in the heck is in Canada? And if you do this, you see that right there? And you see this? Folks, I'm giving you a hint right now. We bought Louisiana, but there's some questions of how far up does it go up here? And how far down does it go here? The hint is we will eventually kind of use Louisiana with Texas, and Louisiana will also be tied into the border of Canada. Those will be later agreements. There is one other provision, and here it is. Under the Louisiana Purchase, the United States agrees to instant citizenship to the French and Spanish who already lived there. I want a quick, short, decisive answer here. Is this a good deal? Yes. Oh, this shouldn't be a maybe, this shouldn't be a thing. This is one heck of a deal. Because not only do we get, of course, the river, we get New Orleans, we get a bunch of crap land that we don't even know what to do with. We do not have the French on our border anymore, and it's $18 million. We were offering 10 for just New Orleans. Heck of a deal. So make no mistake, in every concept, this is a good deal. And ladies, and I know I have some people who had me in class last year. Some of you are supposed to have your reading done. Where is the problem? Remember when the unit started, I told you there was something you need to be prepared for.
It was French and Spanish.
Okay, there's some truth to that. Yes. No, they don't become citizens. Where's the problem? What do you mean? Who is that a problem for? Who is that a problem for? Who is it a problem for? Who? President who? Would Alexander Hamilton give a dang? Listen to what was just said. Does the Constitution say we can buy land? Alexander Hamilton would say, does it say we can't? Alexander Hamilton would use what part of the Constitution?
Necessary.
He would go skipping along without a hesitation in the world. Who is the president?
Jefferson.
What is his promise to everybody?
Won't go outside the Constitution.
He was strict. Does the Constitution in any way, shape, or form say we can buy land? No. Gentlemen, that's the issue. Up until this point, has the United States acquired any additional land? The issue in the Louisiana Purchase is, does the President, does the United States government have the power and the authority to buy land? And in all honesty, even though it's not what she meant, what Brianna said is there's a second question. Does the President have the authority to grant citizenship? That is actually a power of Congress. So we now have a treaty that would be adding land and granting citizenship. Yes, ma'am.
But didn't, like, Jefferson tell Monroe to buy the land?
Yep. Wow. So with your original question is he told him to go, but most people thought it was going to take time. Most people thought that, the general belief was we were probably going to end up negotiating a treaty. And if the French were willing to sell, most people felt it was going to be kind of a process that would take time. And ladies and gentlemen, there is a way that you can buy land if you are an anti-federalist. What is the proper way to do this under the Constitution? What would be the proper way to do it? Come on.
The Northwest.
Nope. What is the proper way to do something under the Constitution?
As a private citizen?
Here is where we are having trouble. You guys got to go and look. You are an anti-federalist. You want to do this. What is the way to do it? You have to make an amendment, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution has a provision that allows you to add, change, or delete. If you want to do this, the only way to do it is to make an amendment. That would be a strict interpretation. What is the problem with amendments? They take time. They take years because every state gets to vote and they're going to debate. What is the problem with time right now? Folks, it goes back to this is an amazing deal. We get New Orleans, we get the river, we get rid of the French. It's not a bad price. So the issue is, what is the danger of waiting?
Napoleon might change his mind.
At any moment, Napoleon can be like, you know what, I don't think I'm getting enough money. You know what, I don't think I want to sell it anymore. This is one of those deals, we want it. It's a good deal. Jefferson is confronted with his moral dilemma. Do you know the craziest thing Jefferson actually proposed? He proposed, and I'm not kidding, he proposed, sign it, buy Louisiana, and then create an amendment. What's the problem with that?
It's after.
Literally, we would buy Louisiana, and then we would create an amendment that says it was okay to just do that. I mean, does it work that way? Can you create an amendment that says it was okay to cheat? Either you're going to take a loose interpretation or you're not. And ladies and gentlemen, I know Mrs. Randall talks about this quite a bit. When you look at the Louisiana Purchase, there are two different arguments here. One, the president uses the presidential treaty power. Two, the Congress will use the necessary and proper clause. Please be aware, in a normal treaty, it only has to be approved by the Senate. The Louisiana Purchase will be voted on by the entire Congress. That means it appears more like a law. So some people argue it's an expansion of necessary and proper. Remember, the president definitely doesn't have the authority to grant citizenship. Some people argue it's an expansion of the treaty power. In any case, what do you need to know? It is absolutely 1,000% an expansion of federal authority. The federal government is doing something that they do not have the right to do under a word-by-word interpretation. Despite the fact that Jefferson is going against his principles, buying Louisiana across America, is this going to be a popular or unpopular decision?
Popular.
This is really popular. Nobody dies. We get more land. Remember how popular, even the Ohio, remember people always want to move. We get New Orleans. Ladies and gentlemen, with the exception of maybe some very angry Federalists who are angering more, because let's be honest, do you know what Louisiana Purchase really does? It guarantees Thomas Jefferson's re-election. This was so popular. It was so amazing. It was so beneficial. And let me put this into perspective. If you haven't looked at the board well, for 18 point, again, I think I actually said it wrong. It's actually 18.24 million. 18.1 is a different treaty later. So if we're being proper, the debt was 3.247. Sorry, my brain just clicked. If you correct it, if you write 18 million, you're probably going to be okay. Look at the board. Folks, what would be the simple, intelligent way, like if you think about your test, for $18.247 million? Thomas Jefferson doubled the size of the United States. Put that into perspective. Thomas Jefferson, when he was president, doubled the size of America without anyone dying for just over $18 million. That's pretty impressive. So that is where kind of the big holy crap comes. The next thing you want to identify, yes, sir?
What about Mississippi and Alabama? Are those parts of Louisiana right now?
Mississippi and Alabama were part of the United States. The difference is the bottom part. Remember, if you look up there, that little Florida strip. So originally, well, Mississippi and Alabama were already ours. That goes back to the Treaty of Paris. The problem is that part that is Florida Spanish, which still is Spanish at this moment. The next item, folks. Most of you are familiar with this. Most of you have heard of this. After we buy the deal, and of course there does become some controversy, this is when people like Edmund Randolph do begin to attack Jefferson. They believe that he has begun to, sort of reject the state right principle. Most people are thrilled. The next item is Lewis and Clark. If you want, you can refer to them as the Corps of Discovery. It's the same group, it's the same incident, it's the same thing. Lewis and Clark, of course, are the two leaders of the expedition. The Corps of Discovery is the actual name of the expedition. I remember when I used to teach early U.S. history before we changed it to just U.S. This was something we spent a lot of time on. Folks, Thomas Jefferson, remember, he's a scientist, he's an inventor, he's a man who loved learning. Thomas Jefferson was like a kid in a candy store. We bought Louisiana for the river in New Orleans. Everything else was like a surprise. We didn't know what was out there. We had no clue. So, yes, sir?
Okay, so what did we end up doing though? So we bought the land and
We just bought it.
It wasn't like.
We simply signed it as a treaty. We argued the necessary proper clause. He took a loose interpretation. There is very little way you can argue against that. Thomas Jefferson bought it. He signed it because it was the right thing to do. And when we look at Thomas Jefferson, what he is going to argue every time he takes a loose interpretation is it was the right thing to do. It was needed for the country. So what you notice is, remember when he was the Secretary of State and he would argue, well, now that he's president, he seems to have a different perspective. Here's the crazy thing I think a lot of you have a hard time with. When Lewis and Clark start here in Independence, Missouri, and they begin to head out, Thomas Jefferson gives them a list of things to do. Because remember, most of this land hasn't been explored. Part of it is they're mapping it, they're telling us what's out there. Haven't any of you guys ever wanted to go to some, like the dream of space? Is there a planet with life? Is there a planet with aliens? What do they look like? What do the plants look like? How do they breathe? What's up? These men are supposed to bring back samples. They're supposed to bring back evidence. And then, folks, what do we use it for? Is it farmland? Is it resource land? And here's the part that I think most of you will be shocked by. As Lewis and Clark leave, they primarily follow, and they're going to use the Missouri River. If you notice, almost the entire expedition follows the river until they get to the Rockies. Do you know what the amazing thing about this is? What are they still looking for? What? The problem with gold is you have to sort of see it, right? And where? Why? Why do we want the Pacific? Why did Columbus come? Ladies and gentlemen, we are still looking for a better way to the Pacific, to trade with the Orient. We are looking, you know how the Mississippi runs north to south? Does everybody agree to that? We are looking for a river that runs east to west. Ladies and gentlemen, part of buying Louisiana is we are hoping that there is a river route that will carry us to the ocean. So as Lewis and Clark are traveling across here, and ladies and gentlemen, the Corps of Discovery is made up of, 19 people. There is one woman, of course, that is Sacagawea. So again, if you want to reference her name, that's where she comes in. There is one African American, a slave named York. Do you know what is really cool about this? the Corps of Discovery, they write diaries, they come back, they bring back all this evidence. One of the things that is really, really interesting about the Corps of Discovery, it is one of the best in all of history examples of pure democracy. As the Corps of Discovery was traveling across this great wilderness, as they were basically that group of people, and on the entire expedition, only one person died. It was a person who died early in the expedition of basically natural causes. He got sick. And why is that so amazing? They ran into a flood. They ran into grizzly bears. They ran into several native Indian tribes who wanted to kill them. What is the amazing part about the people that I started? In the Corps of Discovery, every person got one vote. It is pure democracy. Whenever they were making decisions, should we go this way or this way? Should we turn back or head forward? Everybody, including Sacagawea, including York the slave, got to vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that is cool enough that it deserves referencing. And I have to give at least one story because I find it amazing how weird life is. Ladies and gentlemen, as they are traveling across the great America, and remember, this is going to take them 2 years. One day, the group of them stopped at kind of like a watering area, and they saw this old Indian woman. Okay? She's kind of this old woman, you know, she's kind of all crippled over, and they went up to her, and they gave her a blanket. Okay? About a day later, the entire Corps of Discovery will be surrounded by a group, I believe it's Crow Indians. They are surrounded. The Indians believe that they have intruded upon their space. And as we are about to have a battle where most likely the entire Corps of Discovery will be killed, an old woman comes yelling and shouting out. The woman that they gave the blanket to comes out in the middle of the thing. She explains to the warriors what had happened. And instead of killing them, they basically treat them as friends. They offer them trade, aid, and supplies. And the two groups separate. The other one that is even more amazing is, for those of you who do not know, Sacagawea. Why is she there? Sacagawea is actually a wife. Charbonneau was a French fur trader who had been hired to be the guide. Charbonneau was believed to have been the asset because he had tracked and supposedly fur traded, so they hired him, but he had a wife that he dragged with him, and his wife was an Indian woman that he had bought. Does anybody know what is the most unbelievable thing about poor Sacagawea on the journey? She's pregnant, has a baby, and just keeps on going.
She's on the trip too, though?
Guys, when they get in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, kind of about, because they find, does everybody know they find the Continental Divide? What does that mean?
It's where the water runs.
And this is kind of that most angry, defeating point. They find a place in America where literally, and if you drop a rock on this side, the water runs this way. If you drop a rock on this side, it runs this way, which basically proves that there is not an east to west river, right? Because literally there's a place, because of the mountains, that the water splits. What is the amazing part? Again, second Indian tribe. Once again, you have a standoff. And why are there standoffs? It's over land, and sometimes Lewis and Clark and his people were trying to get food. In the mountains, when they run into a conflict with the Indian tribe, as the two groups are about to fight, what unbelievable thing happens? The Indian that is about to lead the attack against them notices and discovers Sacagawea. It was her brother. Sacagawea, early in life, had been taken prisoner. She later was sold to Charbonneau. Her Indian tribe, which she had lost contact with, was the tribe living in the Rocky Mountains that they have now been confronted by, and the group that was about to attack them was led by her brother. So when you look at it, what I'm basically trying to tell you is there are books about the Lewis and Clark expedition. There are some amazing stories. There is one where they meet a bear too, and a lot of the expedition is they were looking for grizzly bears because there was all these stories. So finally they found grizzly bears. And basically one of the men went out to shoot the grizzly bear, so they shot him, and the grizzly bear literally stands up and just comes running at him. It didn't kill him. So they shot it again, and the grizzly bear just kept coming. And basically the grizzly bear ran by the guy and kind of knocked him over, and by that time other people came, and they had to shoot him something like 5 times and stab him. They did kill the grizzly bear, and Does anyone want to guess what decision they made after this? They left the grizzly bears alone. And before I continue, because I do think that all of these help you get a little human to you, along the expedition they find all sorts of crap. Some of it is still displayed today. What was Thomas Jefferson's famous item that they found? I think they were even named Lewis and Clark. I could be wrong. Lewis and Clark on the expedition found 2 bear cubs. They took the baby bear cubs and traveled them with them because, please understand, look up here. Lewis and Clark come to here and they voted to continue and find the ocean. Please write in your notes, important. This creates the first American claim to Oregon. Because Lewis and Clark do not stop at the mountains. That becomes important later because America begins to argue, Oregon is ours. We have right to Oregon. They make it to the ocean, and please be aware, is even though that there is that huge gap of land, there were people in Oregon who were fur trading. Now that Ohio is civilized, Oregon had become the new fur trading land. When Lewis and Clark made it to Oregon, all of the stuff that they had gathered up, including the bear clubs, were put on a boat and sent back to America. Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery voted to head back because you notice they take a different path. They are still looking for stuff. They found this as an adventure. Instead of coming back on boat, they go back the way they came. The 2 bear cubs will be presented to Thomas Jefferson, and they will be the beginning of the Washington Zoo. Yep. They were the first 2 animals put on display. Any questions?
So they sent their stuff on boat.
And then they themselves come back the land route. And you notice that's why they tried to divert.
How far was it down? Did they have to go all the way down?
Onto South America. Because there is no land way through, and clearly the canal isn't built yet. Yes?
What do they think it was biggest when they found the bear cubs? Was it all everything?
It might have been a situation where they had killed a mother, and honestly, I don't remember if it was a grizzly bear or a black bear, but it was one of those, right? Again, I think if you read it, I think they had killed mom, and then they all kind of felt bad, so they decided to take the kids. So here we go. Again, there is no doubt, and if any of you are looking for something, maybe you can go on it with an American literature class or something. The stories, like there's a lot of it is diary stuff. There is some really cool things. It's a neat expedition. Unfortunately, we can't spend much more time. The next item I'd like to mention, did everybody get the biggest points here? The fact of, the continental divide is important. Oregon is very important. Just the idea of what they're looking for. The one other thing you might want to notice would be, do they show it on this one? Yeah, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, the other item is you see this stupid dotted line, and you see it goes way down here. After Lewis and Clark, people are wondering, well, what's down here? What is in the other part of Louisiana? And a man named Zebulon Pike is going to go exploring. Zebulon Pike, also the man who tried to find the mouth of the Mississippi. The problem with the Mississippi is there really is no one starting place. It is literally hundreds of small lakes and rivers. Zebulon Pike is going to explore this. And once again, there is a reason you need him in your notes. Zebulon Pike, for my purposes, how do you make it? You basically call him an idiot. Today, what is the fastest way to get a place to get a reference? If you've ever been to Colorado, one of the high mountain peaks is called Pikes Peak. He named it after himself. At the time, they believed it was the highest point in America, and of course, Pike wanted to give, connection to himself. Ladies and gentlemen, notice the dotted line. Somehow or another, Pike got himself lost, where he started traveling south, and basically, he ends up down here into what would be parts of Texas or Mexico. Here's what you need to know. When Montgomery Pike eventually makes it home, Montgomery Pike gives a scathing, horrific report how southern Louisiana is nothing but a barren desert, a wasteland, cactuses, there's no rain, there's no water, it's impossible to survive. And ladies and gentlemen, in fact, you can occasionally find old maps. You go to an auction for the next 40 to 50 years. This part of the country will be referred to as the Great American Desert. For years, people avoid going there, settling there, because Montgomery Pike creates this very strong image that it is a desert. And let's be honest, if you're a settler, who would ever want to settle a desert? Anyone else? We now get to scum. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we can now deal with someone who I have to hate because he is going to do something naughty. We will deal with Aaron Burr. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will deal with Aaron Burr. And what we are going to find is we all in this room deserve to make a mistake. Each and every one of us is going to do something dumb. The problem in life is sometimes we also have to look at it. People constantly make mistakes. If people continually have repetitive behavior, I think you also need to start looking at, should they be or do they deserve less trust? Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Burr is a man who's going to get himself involved in several situations. The first one, I would remind yourself, the election of 1800. Remember how he's involved in the tie. Many Democratic Republicans believe he should have stepped down. He challenged for the presidency. That was the first place where people first began to question, was he a moral man? Some of you could argue, why didn't he have the right to be president? That's fine. Number two. Ladies and gentlemen, the next event is known as the Essex Junta. And let's be aware, what is the number one thing that confuses people is the... Ladies and gentlemen, the Essex Junta is simply the name of the incident. It is the name of the scandal. Essex Junta. J-U-N-T-O. Yes. So it's what? E-S-S-E-X. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Essex Junta, the scandal is actually involving a man named Timothy Pickering. Okay? So the actual scandal, this is a real scandal. This is not a joke. This is not an exaggeration. This is a real scandal. Someone is going to go to jail.
Timothy who?
Pickering. And I would say his name is kind of on one of those, you could definitely see it, but it is probably not one of those absolute guaranteed for everybody. But yes, if you are trying to be, I want to be a B or an A, you might want to know it. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the situation. Like many Federalists, the Federalists were beginning to feel isolated, left out. America was becoming predominantly Democratic Republican. People like Timothy Pickering were trying to figure out how to revive the Federalists. Timothy Pickering is going to come up with a new approach, which is a little bit illegal. Timothy Pickering believes that this part of America, New England, is still predominantly Federalist. Trade, merchant, industry. Here's the problem. Kind of like in the old days of Dominion New England. Timothy Pickering travels around New England. He begins to support candidates to run for governor, to run for the Senate throughout New England. Think of the word junta. A junta is an attempt to overthrow the government. What Timothy Pickering is proposing, he was going to use his vast wealth to help people get elected. The idea was, all across New England, all of these people would be elected, and then as a group, led by Pickering, they would make decisions. They would always vote together. Whatever the issue was, we would vote together. So the idea was, instead of that group having one vote, all of those states would vote simultaneously. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem is, in order to do this, Timothy Pickering will be caught rigging elections, bribing people, and doing things that were illegal. Timothy Pickering so desperately wanted to revive the Federalist Party, in simplest words, he cheated. Correct? Is everybody okay right now? That technically is the Essex Junta. How on earth does it affect Aaron Burr? Ladies and gentlemen, it is the year 1804. Aaron Burr is still the vice president, but please be aware, in 1804 there's an election coming. Everybody okay? Do you think Jefferson is going to openly support Aaron Burr to be his running mate again? No, the two men are angry. In 1804, Aaron Burr announces he was going to run for governor of New York. So Aaron Burr decided that he was going to give up federal politics and he was going to run for the governor of one of the most powerful states. Who else from our class is a prominent politician of New York? Hamilton. Ladies and gentlemen, this is pretty much what happens. Aaron Burr is running, and one day, Hamilton doesn't like him. For whatever, I don't know, maybe in kindergarten he spit on him. They don't like each other. One day, Hamilton is out walking around, and he saw a sign. You know, kind of like a vote for Aaron Burr, I'm a good guy. There was a sign. And with big glee, Aaron Burr noticed, in the bottom of the sign, it said, paid for, Timothy Pickering. Aaron Burr, of course, rips down the sign, because what have we established Timothy Pickering is? A cheater. Alexander Hamilton begins to go all across New York making what argument? Aaron Burr is associating with cheaters. If Timothy Pickering is a cheater and a scoundrel, therefore it is only fair to assume Aaron Burr must be a cheater and a scoundrel, and he probably took, illegal money. Maybe he was going to rig the election. Ladies and gentlemen, very similar to 1800 when Hamilton endorsed Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton goes out of his way to campaign against Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr loses. Folks, if you are Aaron Burr, twice Alexander Hamilton has cost you a very important job. Second, Alexander Hamilton is also going across the country calling you a cheater, a scoundrel. He is connecting you to a man who has been arrested. And what happens? Aaron Burr goes up to Alexander Hamilton, and this is where you get the big smile on your face. Folks, I realize, 1804, Aaron Burr challenges Hamilton to a duel. Now, I realize, maybe some of you have seen this in a movie. Ladies and gentlemen, in the year 1804, if you had a disagreement with another person and you believe they insulted your honor, you could walk up to them, challenge them to a duel, which is a gunfight, which is a legal way to settle an argument. If you have the duel, that follows the law in some states. What is the point of a challenge of a duel? You are saying you have insulted me unfairly. If you accept the duel, you argue, I am telling the truth, and I will defend what I said. If you refuse, then I can call you a liar. Everybody in the United States is encouraging him to refuse. Many states have banned dueling as being barbaric, as being outdated. In fact, the state of New York, dueling was illegal. The problem is Hamilton has his big ego. Hamilton has a little bit of his own arrogance. Hamilton accepts the duel. Now, for those of you who are not following along, on July 11th, 1804, in Weehawken, New Jersey, why? Because you can't duel in New York, it's illegal. In New York, it would be murder. In Weehawken, New Jersey, it's two people settling a dispute. Gotta love New Jersey. Think about what's happening. Vice President of the United States is having a duel with the former Secretary of the Treasury. That is the current Vice President. They go to Weehawken. Please understand, it's very organized. You get a gun, you get one bullet, you basically take spaces. According to accounts, Hamilton, when they say fire, takes his gun and kind of puts it over here. According to what people there said, is Hamilton showed up. He was kind of protesting that I am not going to duel, but I'm not a coward. However, what the people say is Aaron Burr, who is a very good shot, raised his gun and aimed carefully and shoots and kills Alexander Hamilton. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Burr, for those of you who did not know, in 1804, shoots and kills Alexander Hamilton. And the truth is, we aren't done yet. It gets better. Ladies and gentlemen, Hamilton, the beloved Federalist leader, is dead. He's gone. We will not talk about him anymore. Aaron Burr just killed himself. Nobody wants to deal with him because the Federalists hate him. They killed him. Some people call him a murderer. Other people look at him as kind of being untrustworthy. Some people believe he's kept at Pickering. The duel destroyed Aaron Burr's career. Aaron Burr becomes an outcast. He becomes kind of he's just a black sheep. He's still the vice president. And here's the best one. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1805, Aaron Burr is going to come back for one last final hurrah. In 1805, Aaron Burr gets involved. In all honesty, folks, I know it's hard to believe. This is the most staggering, the most repulsive, the most unbelievable, and he just shot somebody. The last incident is called the Burr Conspiracy. Oh, whenever the word conspiracy is connected to your name, that's probably not good. Here's what happens. The Burr Conspiracy. Ladies and gentlemen, the Burr Conspiracy focuses really on three men: Aaron Burr, Anthony Mary, and James Wilkinson. Aaron Burr, of course, started out as the vice president. Anthony Mary was the English minister of the United States. So Anthony Mary is actually English. And then Wilkinson is the governor of the Louisiana Territory. Remember, we just bought that from the French. And what I'm about to tell you, it sounds like a joke. Folks, where this came from, how these three idiots came up with the plan, who knows? But ladies and gentlemen, the proposal is the three men are going to overthrow Louisiana and create their own country. So the proposal is Aaron Burr is to lead treason to overthrow Louisiana. And again, if you look at the three men, Wilkinson is going to help because he controls the territory. Burr would, of course, be the leader of this. And Anthony Mary is offering to provide help from England. Money and naval support. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. People in the plane, I hope you have a great performance. And for the rest of you,